Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in to tonight's very special broadcast of the Liberty Dad podcast, the Dad Talk podcast. Tonight I have a very special guest. It is the one and only, my dad. Mr. C, as we're going, Dan Cummings, same as me, if you didn't know what the D in DL stands for. So let's go ahead and bring him on in as soon as I get back to there we are. And it looks like Mr. C is live. Now you are out there in front of everybody. So we'll go ahead and put this up on the proper screen so that we can see. Yes, there are people in China probably watching you, but not really. So, so welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right.
Good to be here.
And it's a little awkward because my dad does not do these kind of things. So I was like, come on, you got to do this because I put out an internet poll and well, we have to honor the poll. Like this, they said what they said. So here we are doing this episode.
96%.
Right. 96% of the people said out of like 50 votes, 50 whole votes. So first and foremost, I guess let's kind of get one thing out of the way here. I guess I got to click on this button up here so that it says, because we're already started now. So how about, bam, there we go. Liberty Dad, Mr. C, spilling the beans. Okay, so if you're watching and you have anything that you want to say, you want to ask, we'll consider it. Depends on what you're asking. We'll see. I'm not above being embarrassed, but the first thing I want to ask my own pops here is, did you ever in your wildest dreams think that I was going to grow up to be a not so famous podcaster?
I hadn't thought about it, but
so
everything that your mother ever did, you sort of were the devil's advocate.
Right.
So it doesn't surprise me.
So we've already got one person just jumping right out of the gate with a question. So let's throw that up on the screen there. It says, tell us the truth, Mr. C. How rebellious was DL when he was younger? So we're going to get into that. And I don't know, we'll talk about these kind of things. I like to think that I probably wasn't very rebellious at all. Like I imagine that you probably thought every single day, this kid couldn't get any better.
You were explosive, but not necessarily rebellious. You were hidden, but not necessarily.
So rebellious. I'm conniving. So beware, everyone. All right. So let's what I want to do on this show. And I didn't really give my dad a whole lot of prep because I was like, well, it's more fun if he doesn't have all the details, but I'm not really going to embarrass him. I'm not really going to throw anything crazy out there. Okay. So our history starts when I was about 3 years old.
True.
So my mom met Dad, and I think you guys went on like one date.
That's true.
And then you got married 3 weeks later.
Yes.
And he's still here. So did somebody just knock on my door?
Somebody's there.
It might be my son. So you can unlock the door if you want to reach over there. So sometimes as Liberty Dad, you get Liberty Son to get in here. And I guess this is Liberty Granddad. I'm not really sure how that works exactly. So let's see what we got here. All right. So, okay. So
Can I do this?
Yes. We probably aren't going to play snowballs because we're on air. Can you wave to all the people? So he's waving to all the people. So do you want to hold on to these and you can sit over here, I guess? All right. So you can sit over here next to your daddy. All right. So this is what it means to be a Liberty Dad. Sometimes your son jumps in. And it sounds to me like the mics kind of keep cutting in and out. I don't know if that's what's going on. But for anybody that's watching on the stream, I'm trying something out. I'm trying to work out these lapel mics. So if it sounds weird or wonky, please let me know. We'll try to figure out what we can do on the fly and see how that works. So our history, as we were talking, the history starts when I was about 3 years old. And you got married 3 weeks later. So clearly I made a great impression, right? Because he married my mom and then continued on for 35 years until she passed away in 2016. And then, of course, continues on to be my dad. So so that's good. I mean, be weird if he decided to no longer.
Oh, geez.
That'd be awkward. So I'm not sure how I would talk about that. But anyway, so since we don't have to, so what was I like at 3? Because he's 4, and you've got to experience some of him. Was I like him?
In a sense, yes, you were a climber, for one thing. You didn't take long to know how to open the door. You took back then we had the old telephone books,
right?
Big stack telephone books. You pile them on top of each other and unlock the door. You know, if the window is locked, you'd climb up on the chair and unlock it. You know, so there was concerns as far as a 3-year-old being able to hurt himself.
Right.
But and you were very knowledgeable for a 3-year-old. You already had
where this is going.
you already had your colors down pretty good in numbers, definitely. And after I got in the picture, my father, your grandfather, was a mechanic, and he got into cars big time. And I kind of knew the cars pretty well, and as we traveled along, you kind of picked it up real quick,
mm-hmm.
you know. So, you know, the car would go by and, that's a Cadillac, you know. And that's pretty much where we were at that age.
Okay, awesome. So I was a climber, and I was somebody that knew all my colors, and I knew what a Cadillac was. So clearly I was meant to be something, right? So yeah. Here I am. I don't have the Cadillac, but I at least have the podcast. So, hey, you know, I mean, you take what you can get. You have some wins, you have some losses. It's okay. All right. So I kept telling, so it was weird. We were at breakfast the other day, mm-hmm. and he starts telling stories. I was like, hold up, like, hold these stories for the show. Because here's the fun part. My wife is downstairs with your wife having like a watch party. And I think even one of my friends might come over, and they're like literally gonna, like, they're downstairs. But you know, most of you don't realize this room is like 10 by 10. So I couldn't like fit people in here for a live audience, which would make it even really weird. You know, I mean, it's one thing looking at yourself on the screen and then seeing, you know, chats come up on the side. It would be another thing to see all of that and then have real people in there.
True.
You know, because I don't know, my wife might be a heckler. So who knows what'll happen. But at any rate,
should I lock him out?
No, he's fine. He'll come in and out. He's Liberty's son, and you know, I'm just like, so they have this term, and I think I mentioned it the other day to you. They call it free range children, or as I like to call children. Like, This is what children do. They just run around and they do stuff, and sometimes it's where they're not supposed to be, and sometimes whatever, right? And then parents kind of let them. They're like, you know, like, open the door, and they're like, get out and don't come back till the street lights turn on. Those kind of, that's how I grew up. Mm-hmm. And then your mom never knew exactly how, you know, I'm going around the block, Mom. And, you know, it was like around the block, but like all of the blocks is kind of what it really meant, right? You know, you would go around like 7 blocks and be like, all of these blocks. And so you would kind of justify it somewhere. You didn't really justify, you just did. So, so we let him kind of roam around the house, and, you know, we try to baby proof as much as we can.
Right.
But my thought is, if he gets exposed to things and has this opportunity to do things, then he'll be better off in the long run. Because as he's getting exposed to it, then what I end up having to do is follow along and kind of see what he's doing. And so it kind of keeps me on my guard all the time. And then when I see him getting into something, depends on what it is. If it's something that's really, really serious, then I can intervene and say, okay, hold up, we're not gonna play with this. But if it's something like not too terribly serious, like where we can manage, then I try to say, okay, well, let's show you how it works.
Right.
So that you have a gist, because you've shown an interest. So why not? Unless it's something serious. So like you were talking about being a mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not a mechanic. I've done some mechanic work, but I really don't like working on cars. I do like woodworking and, you know, building stuff out of wood. And so he comes out and he'll play with the tools. Right. But like the table saw is completely off limits.
Well, of course.
He doesn't get to touch it. I barely even let him look at it. Okay. I'm like, Your eyes are over here, you know. Um, so, it's okay if he comes in, right? That's kind of a long way to go around it. So, but okay. So climber, what did I climb into anything else, or was it just, hey, I climbed to leave the house? Because apparently when I was 3, I was already trying to run away. Wait a minute, I was trying to run away at 3? What kind of life did I really have?
I was in the military, and from where our house was, it was like about a half a mile down was my office.
Okay.
Maybe more, mile and a half, maybe. But you had broke out at the age of 4, I think it was. Excuse me. And I had just come home from work. I worked midnights most of the time, and you weren't there. And it's sort of like, I asked the wife, "Where you at?" And she, "Oh my goodness, look, he's climbed up." And we talked to a neighbor, and the neighbor lady says, "Yeah, he was over here just like 6:30 in the morning." She says, he talking about going to your work. I thought we send him home. So I started going down. Now you're talking on one side of the main road is the ocean, and on the other side, you go from like one shopping center to another, basically, until you get to the base. And I pulled into that first one, and I would venture to say that's 1/10 of a mile, you know. And I see this police car, and this policeman's talking to something in the back seat, and I figured no harm done. At least ask him, you know. Back then, you lose a child, you're not necessarily going to go to jail, but
Right.
as it turned out, you were in the back seat, and he was talking to you.
So I was already arrested by the time I was 4.
Yes.
All right. So libertarians, I'm just saying, I've one-upped all of y'all. I got arrested at the age of 4.
That's true.
So not fingerprinted though. So, but anyway, so okay, so you caught me in the back seat trying to play policeman,
Mm-hmm.
and what was your feeling at the moment? If you can, I know this is a long time. I mean, it was like 40 some years ago.
Well, I can answer that in front of anybody and everybody. You have a 4-year-old.
Right.
You get up one morning and he's not in the house.
I'm gonna freak out.
Well,
I'm gonna freak out.
and you got water right in the backyard, basically. Right. You know.
I mean, I freaked out before we had him, when we had a dog, and she got loose, and then she got loose like at night, like 11 o'clock at night. So now I'm trying to run around and try to find this stupid dog in the neighborhood, and there's no way for me to identify where in the neighborhood she is.
True.
And I can't just go traipsing through people's yards, right?
No.
And not gonna lie, we have geese in the lake. And all of a sudden I heard the geese making a commotion.
Wow.
And I was like, oh Lord. I was like, that dog is in the middle of the lake. Now she wasn't really a lake dog, right? She didn't really want to get in the water. She was, but you know, at this time I'm like, one, she was still relatively new to the fam. And so I was like, and all I could think about was, I'm gonna wake up in the morning and see a white bloated dog floating around in the lake.
I imagine.
We
think about all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. You know, it's just like the thoughts that go through your mind are, you know, so I can only imagine how much worse it would be with a child.
Oh yeah.
Right. Because just for the record, people, children are more important than dogs. I know some people have trouble with that.
You come up with these horrible thoughts, but you don't have time to sit there and keep thinking.
Right.
You got to get on the ball.
Right. So, so that's that is rough. And the closest that I've come to that is at your house.
Yeah, I know.
Of all places.
I know where you're going there.
Oh man, this guy right here. He's like, you know what? I'm gonna pay you back. Come to my house for Christmas. No. So here's what happened with Zach. It was probably like a year ago. It wasn't last Christmas, but it was the one before, correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Correct. So he would have been 3. No,
He'd been 2
He was just getting ready to go on to 3, so he was just under 2
and barely walking.
And we come home from wherever we were. We come to your house, and I think he wanted us to turn left. And so he was in the stage where every now and then he would kind of like say, I want you to do this. And he'd be like, go that way. And you're like, no, we need to go this way because this is literally. So then he would just like go into this huge fit, right? And so there were all these, these just moments where he would just kind of go into a fit and kind of like a little bit of a rage. And so he did. And then I was like, all right, well, maybe I will just carry him into the car. So I'm sorry, the house. So I get him out, which was a struggle. He's holding on to the door, and I'm like, and so I finally get him out. We go through the garage. We go in the pantry. We go through the kitchen. We go into the living room. I sit him down. I'm like, just sit. Now he's throwing a fit. He's very angry. Okay, let's put it that way. And he gets up and he runs, and I'm like, okay, well, I'll just follow behind and see what happens. So I follow behind. He goes to the kitchen. He goes to the pantry. And if you can imagine like not parallel, blank on the word I want, perpendicular walls, right? And so you've got one door here and you got another door here. Okay, folks?
One was for the
garage. One's for the garage. He tries to open the garage door. It's not working for whatever reason. I can't remember why. Then he reaches over to grab the other door. And at first, I'm like, oh, it's just the pantry. Whatever, we'll figure out what happens when he opens the door. I was just kind of trying to let this fire die down. So he opens the door about 2 inches, and I see this dark space on the bottom of the door. And I was like, oh, my God. So now I realize, because I've forgotten that in Florida, we don't have basements. So this is now your basement. I forgot about it because I don't think about basements in houses at this point. So I'm like 2, maybe 3 feet away. And I'm telling you what, there is a certain terror that came over, and I could not move fast enough before he pushed the door open, took a step, and then just dropped.
Yeah.
Just dropped. Now, he didn't make it very far. He only, which sounds kind of weird. He didn't make it very far. He only fell down like 2 or 3 stairs. Now, I want you folks to know, this kid was still in a rage. This didn't stop him. He wasn't like, oh, crap, what's going on here? I better slow my row. Nope, not at all. So now I pick him up. My voice is all jacked up because I'm kind of sick at the time. And so now I'm in this weird position because I'm not angry and I'm not like crying sad, but I'm in this weird like hysterical mode. So then I pick him up and I'm carrying him across the house, literally like this. Now, again, he's still kicking and screaming. Okay, he has not stopped one bit, kept going. Okay, tough kid. And so I'm carrying him across the house now, and I'm kind of sort of yelling at him, but it's more like, you could have got hurt. And so I finally so at this point, I go past everybody, go all the way down the hall to the other side of the house. And I sit him down on the floor, and again, still kicking and screaming. My wife comes over and she's like, hey, let me have a little bit of time with him. I was like, okay. Now, so you know, at this point, nobody knows what happened except for Sherry, your wife.
Right. Correct.
She's the only one that saw it. So my wife and my dad, all they see is a little kid run, and then a few moments later, me come carrying him back, like hysterically yelling at him with this voice that sounds kind of wimpy. It sounded kind of like my scooter if I were to beep it when I was like on the road, like beep, 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 like, what are you yelling, or what are you doing? Like, that's kind of probably what my voice sounded like, really, really wimpy. Okay. And so nobody knows what's happening. I come, so now my wife, Christy, she takes care of him. And then I come back, and we can end the story there if we want, or we can keep going. We'll keep going because this is the time for me to be embarrassed. So then I come out, and Dad comes up and he's like, and I'm standing out from the door, and he's like, you all right? He's like, what the hell is going on here? And then I just lost it. Like, all those emotions caught up, and I just busted out crying like a little girl, and whatever. Make fun of me if you want. I don't care. So I can only imagine what the feelings are and I think you said by the ocean. So this means we were living in
Melbourne,
in
Melbourne,
Florida. Okay,
Melbourne, Florida.
Melbourne, Florida. Okay, so we were living in Florida. So I could have been eaten by a shark. You know what I'm saying? I'm just I don't know. I don't know what to tell you people. Like, I'm so awesome that I was not afraid to go and get eaten by a shark or potentially get beat up by the police. So I was like, bring it. At
Wait,
4.
do you know that at 16 you can create the same feelings in your parents?
Oh boy, what do we got here? All right, so 16. What did I do?
What was your first car?
It was an
Mustang,
80.
right?
No, it was 84. 84. It was an early 80s Escort hatchback.
Okay.
The second car was an 85 Mustang.
Is that what one you had at the time?
I don't remember.
We had a house in Richmond area. Right?
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And it was a car that you were driving. We had just met some new people from church, brand new people. My wife and I and them went out to eat, and we left you watching all the kids, your brother, your sister, and their kids.
Oh,
You remember what happened?
Is this the trailer story?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that would have been
where you drove them around.
So that would have been not. So that was like a couple cars in. So folks, they talk about the word privileged all the time. So I had multiple cars growing up. So I guess I was very, very privileged. Okay. So that wasn't either one of those cars. That was I believe, Ford Tracer that I had, and it was teal. And so here's the story. You know the story, or do you want me to tell it?
I know the story. You go for it. Go
ahead. Okay. So there was my brother and my sister. So I must have been 16 because I was driving. Maybe 17. I don't know. I wasn't any older than 17, I don't think. And so I had my brother and my sister, who are respectively, let's say my brother first, so 12 and 6 years younger than me. So my brother's 12 years younger than me, and my sister's 6.
I want everybody to understand. The people that had their kids were brand new to us.
Right.
We were brand new friends. We went out for dinner and left him in charge of their kids and our kids.
Right. So their kids, I think, so I'm like 17. My sister is like 12. My brother is like 6. And their kids were somewhere between like 6 and 9. I think they had 3 of them, something like that. And we had like 7 acres of land. We lived right on the Richmond, the Indiana-Ohio border. And we had not a tractor, but we had a riding mower that had one of those little wagons that you pull behind and you carry like all kind of whatever. And we were riding around, and all the kids insisted on going faster, right? And I was like, well, it doesn't go any faster. This is as fast as the mower goes. And they were like, faster, faster, faster. And I mean, what do you do when, kids are insisting on going faster? I mean, you kind of got to listen to them, right? I mean, And so I took the tractor and I tied it to the underneath of the body of my car with a rope. Okay. And we're just driving around slowly. So let's be clear. Faster meaning faster than the mower would go, but not like crazy fast. Okay. So we're not like speeding around, drifting and all that in the yard. And then we had a huge gravel drive and a gravel circle drive. And as we were coming across that, I think the rope basically wore itself. So it ripped or broke or whatever you want to call it. It basically cut itself away because I tied it to metal, which kind of rubbed against it. Right. And all of a sudden I hear, and I look, and the thing had flipped over, and there's like an arm hanging out here and a leg hanging out here. And I was like, oh Lord. And I jump out and I flip it over, and the kids are like, they got scrapes up and down their faces. And
all over their bodies, arms, faces.
Yeah. So, luckily though, the dad, I don't know how the mom took it, but the dad was one of those fun type of dads, right? He was kind of like, so they got home, and let me tell you something about children. I mean, you know what? They insisted that I go faster, and I obliged, right? I'm like, all right, well, we can try to go a little faster. But then those little dishonest brats, almost all of them, I'm not sure how many, but I know several of them, as soon as their parents got home, he made us get in the car. I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I didn't make you do anything, you know? I was just trying to respect your right to make your own decisions, libertarians. So, and so they lied and they bore false witness, however you want to phrase it. And luckily the dad, though, he was just like, they'll be fine because he's had a few scrapes, whatever. But yeah, so probably not a good idea to leave your children with me, but not for the reasons that society is currently worried about, right? Because I'm just going to be like, well, this seems like it'll be a fun idea. And then, come home and the kid's got like a big little scrape across their face. Like, what happened?
Brand new people you went out to eat with.
Like, well, they were having fun until they weren't. Like, I don't know what to tell you. So they live in the life that I lived. You go out, have fun, and you come home and your mom's like, what in the world happened to you? Mm-hmm. So, all right. So let's see. Let's check the comments here. Let's see if there's anything good. Let's see here. The bigger challenge. Let's see. Tub here. The bigger challenge is undoubtedly being your father. So we were talking about this earlier about being a challenge. Zach being a challenge to me, and he was like, well, clearly, it must have been more challenging for you to be my dad than for me to be Zach's dad. He's not here, but if he was
here, I think it's about the same challenge.
Do you think it's about the same?
Yeah.
Okay. Because the stories that I heard, I feel like it might be a little otherwise.
Let me refrain from that. I think it's the same when the instances make any parent scared for their life, for anything. It is kind of the same situation.
Sure.
But comparing you to your own son, my grandson, I see the same traits. I don't know. He hasn't had time to grow up into what you've grown up into. So,
well, he's 4 and he's not been arrested yet. So I'm just saying the apple has fallen far from the tree.
Well, you know what?
I don't even know if I could trust him. I don't even know if he's mine, actually. Now I'm kind of wondering.
When he was 4 or 5, you had friends over at the house and you took a Tonka truck. And anybody that's from my age, way back when, the Tonka trucks were metal. They weren't plastic like you get toys nowadays. And you chose not to let that person play with your toy, using that toy on his head.
I mean, hey, what can I say? Property,
that was in base housing.
It was probably my property, and I understood property rights, and I had to defend myself against somebody that was going to take my property and use it against my will. That's all I can say about that.
I've seen your son do the same thing.
No, he hasn't hit anybody yet.
No, property rights.
So it's funny. The other day, one of my friends came over with his son, and this was like maybe 3 weeks ago. It was relatively recent, and Zach didn't want him to play with the particular toy, and I was like, now it's interesting because I was telling my dad this, in the libertarian community, there is a huge sense of how you raise your children. So there's a lot of don't spank them. Some people don't believe in yelling them at them at all. So there's a very different approach in raising children. So if you're not libertarian, that doesn't mean just letting your kid do whatever they damn well please. That's not what that means. It just means like you take a different approach to get the same results that you want to raise up a child. So, and so I've listened to those, and I tried to, seek out different ways to approach things. So the first time he wanted to play that's mine game, I was like, oh, wow, what am I doing? I don't know, because the normal response from many parents is to say, no, you share, and you just force the kid to share. And so a lot of people in my community will say, well, you should teach ownership at an early age. So now I'm like, all right, how do I teach ownership? But at the same time, I don't want to be a jerk. I mean, like literally we brought another kid over and I want you to play nicely. So off the cuff, I just said, all right, if you don't want him to play with that toy, you put it up and you go find one that he can play with.
All right. Okay.
Right. So that allowed him to have his ownership, but at the same time told him, hey, if your ownership is going to be like stingy, since he's here to play with you, then you find something else that will be acceptable. And then, but you also can't play with it in front of him because I think that would be rude. I mean, 3-year-olds are rude anyway, but I think that would be teaching that rude is okay. And so I was like, you go put it away then, right? If you can't play with it, then nobody plays with it. It's still yours, and you don't have to let them play with it, but you do got to go find something else, because that's why I got you all them toys. You go find one, right? So this is my house, my rules.
So try that with his favorite candy bar, and he's got a second one. See how that goes.
With food, he's actually really, really good.
Is he?
Oh man, he could. I mean, if you're like, it doesn't matter what he's eating. You're like, hey, can I have one? He could have a pile of grapes, and you're like, can I have one? He'll give you one grape. I don't think he quite understands portions yet, so he's not like trying to be stingy in that sense. But he'll give you, and he's really, really good when it comes to food.
Okay.
So
we got to get off of him and get back on you.
Oh, okay. So you need to tell another story because, let's see here. Let's see if there's any.
We've told you.
Do you talk politics together? Here's a good question from that libertarian lady. Do you talk politics together?
I don't.
Yeah, we don't really talk politics. We don't talk a whole bunch because he lives way, way up north in Michigan. Like, it's practically the tundra. And it's a tyrannical state, no less. I'm just throwing that out there. Just throwing it out there. Governor, what is her name? Wretched? Something like Whitmer or Wretched, same difference. So, you've got that terrible governor up there, or still governor, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, man. But no, we don't talk about politics much. We will every now and then. My mom and I did. We would talk about politics some. And but Dad and I, we just catch up and we talk about what's going on in life, blah blah blah.
Well,
how's your foot? Oh, my foot's fine.
In all honesty, your mother she taught you how to do your woodworking and stuff. How to fix things and stuff like that. I've never been good at that. I taught you. Well, I was into sports, and that wasn't your cup of tea.
Didn't really work.
We tried.
It
didn't work.
Sorry.
But so far on the podcast, what we did do, we talked about your earliest incident, and we talked about your latest incident.
Oh, where are we going with this?
There's some circumstances that happen that you never find out what happened.
Such as
when we lived in base housing the day that I was being re-enlisted.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I'd come home, and actually I got called home because you had somehow, and even to this day you don't know, or you say you don't. He cut 3/4 of his tongue off. We had an area where we had a plastic pool inside of a screen house. These the military homes were basically built in the 1930s, 1920s, stuff like that. And it was one of the rights you had as a military member if you got enough time in to be able to stay there. And some of them were called refurbished homes, where you, instead of them taking all of your housing allowance, they might only take 80% of your housing allowance.
Right.
But that one day, in that screen porch, from the best we know, we had a plastic pool out there, and we don't know what happened or how, or if you jumped off the ledge. The screen porch had the ledges up about 7 foot high, or kids can get up on that stuff too. Don't know. Honestly, don't know what happened, but 3/4 of your tongue was cut off. And my wife.
Oh, hold on for just a moment. So, my wife, if you're watching, you may want to mute this part. I'm just saying, a little squeamish. Go ahead.
My wife had talked to the neighbor lady before the neighbor lady was there, and thank goodness for that neighbor lady. The neighbor lady says, they'll never be able to sew that back together. And that's just what a mother needs to hear. And you can imagine how the mother was panicked. Heck, I was panicked. But at the time, you had what they called heart problems. Okay. Holes in your heart that had to close up as you were a kid and grew up, and they hadn't closed up at that time. So when we went to the emergency room, I had the doctor had to sew your tongue stitch by stitch without any painkiller.
Right.
None whatsoever. And I will tell you this: I can remember that might have been the worst day of my entire life, because I can remember saying, "Son, stick it out. You have to let him do it again." And you listen. You actually listen. But boy, were you crying, and boy, did it hurt. I'm sure. And it actually affected your life later on.
Yeah.
I can only let you tell that one.
Sure. We'll get there.
But that was the day.
Right. And I think my mother, I don't know who it was, but I think she told the story once, and she said that a neighbor lady or somebody that came by asked her if she had done it or something like that. And apparently my blood's kind of coming out of my mouth, and she's got a rag stuffed in my mouth trying to figure out, what the hell to do here. And so, so that probably antagonized Mom, I imagine, because, you didn't do anything, and your child here looks like they're about to, pour all their blood out their mouth. And then somebody's like, did you do that?
If there is an obvious thing, it sounded, if I was to go with what seemed obvious, you probably jumped off the ledge and bit the tongue yourself.
Probably. It's probably something similar to that, like jumped, fell, whatever, and then bit my own tongue, and then there goes that story. As far as affecting me to this day, now it's funny because people will say, when I tell people, I'm like, I have all my dental work done without Novocaine, because if you stick me with the needle, I will literally curl up in the fetal position and hyperventilate. So, and I'm hoping that the CIA does not hear this, or the FBI, because if they ever need to get information out of me, screw you, you're not getting it anyway. But so I'll go to the dentist, and like when I was like 14 or 15, somewhere around there, I remember getting like a cavity filled, and they're like, and they got this huge needle, and I'm like, what the hell? And then they stuck me, and then like it just, I freak out so bad. So I actually have all my dental work done with either knocked out. So if I've had to have a couple impacted wisdom teeth pulled, which I was originally just going to be like, just pull the damn thing out. But I will not get Novocaine, not because of the pain, because it doesn't really hurt that much, but because the mental torture is so much that I would actually rather deal with the physical pain of them drilling on my teeth. And let me tell you, if like I've had people like I've known, and they're like, you know what, I'm just gonna go and I don't need no Novocaine, blah blah blah. And I'm like, okay, look, if you think you're just gonna be a badass, don't. It's a terrible, terrible idea, because it hurts like nothing else. Okay, but because I would rather deal with the pain than the mental torture, I tolerate it somehow. I'm not really sure. I don't really consider myself a badass. That's just the way it is. And so
the part of this story that we didn't tell was after the doctor got your tongue sewed together, it sort of, how can I show this? Came up like that, not even.
Right.
Not even. And you had to go through speech classes.
Right.
For, I think, close to 2 years before you had a clear speech.
Right. And look at me. I won't shut up now. I got a podcast. I'm going to city council and I'm yelling at them. I'm talking all the time. So for all the people that don't really like me talking, sorry. Life happens.
To be more fair towards the lady that asked about the politicians, I don't like to get into politics too much.
Mm-hmm.
In all fairness, you have your choice and I have mine.
Right.
And my choices are not necessarily a political party. My choices are a political means of what I consider morality.
Okay.
And everybody has their own consideration as far as morality, but that would be how I choose the individual for a position.
Fair enough. And look, I'm just slowly talking about libertarianism as we go along. And then, he's only 72, so he's got till 100. I got a few years to try to convert him. So like whatever. No need to rush it, folks. This is what I keep telling you, First of all, it's family. At the end of the day, we're family, no matter what. Like I see
we
these
don't
stories.
Try to talk each other into anything.
Not really. I see these families and these stories, at least I don't know if they're true, but I assume that there's probably some where people are like, they like, we don't talk politics, or worse, like somebody got divorced because of politics. And I'm like, really? You get divorced? Like, that's wild. Like, that's crazy. So I refuse to have those kind of relationships where they're subject to disagreement based on the value that you get is subject to your disagreement. I would rather it be like, hey, this is family, like, okay, he's not going to vote for the politician that I want,
obviously,
but he was kind of there when I needed him, so like, hey, we'll go with that, right? Like, we'll leave that, we'll leave these crazy bygones to be bygones. We'll just talk about it occasionally, maybe bring up a couple solid points, and then move on and enjoy a nice glass of wine.
There's been a couple times I've asked you about the Libertarian Party because I'm not schooled on it.
This is fair. And when we talk about it, but we don't make a big issue of it. Right. Like this is, to me, you need to maintain some semblance of family and friends, because at the end of the day, when it comes to politics, like, things can get nasty, right? Mm-hmm. And then people that you thought were on your side, you find out maybe they're not, or they were up until a point. And so to me, like, you've got to maintain your relationships with your family.
Right.
Mama was a diehard conservative Republican till the day she died, and I'm very content with that. But would I have liked to be a libertarian? Sure, but I'm content.
Hers was matter of morality.
Right.
I mean, we have beliefs, and if the party, didn't matter which party it was, but the party that honored our beliefs turned out to be
right.
I lost my.
That's a sign.
My ears falling off.
That's a sign from God. I think he's telling you.
Yeah,
I think he's pushing you in the direction of libertarianism.
Either that or he's trying to keep me from. Anyway.
Okay. So at any rate, so let's see here. I know someone in Duval. Oh, wait a minute. We got to put this up on the screen. Boom. I know someone in Duval who cut out most of her nuclear family because they support Donald J. Trump. Mm. Look, I am no fan of Donald J. Trump, okay? None. But I would not cut out family over that, because that's just retarded. Like, that's really the only way that you can say this. Like, it's not polite. I know people get mad. They're like, don't say the R word. No, that's retarded. And you are a fool if you do that.
Now, so, let me ask this.
Yeah.
This is Liberty Dad.
It is.
And I understand that you are libertarian.
Yes.
But I guess the show does cover that in a lot of aspects, doesn't it?
Sort of. The gist of Liberty Dad really, so it's funny because people are like, oh man, you talk about dad stuff, and I'm like, meh, kind of. So I have 3 different shows that I do. Right. I do my dad talk, and the dad talk is bringing dads on normally to talk about what they want to talk about. In this particular case, I chose the topic to kind of like.
Well, the part about dads is it don't matter what political party you're from or think you're from. It has nothing to do with being a dad. Period.
Right. And so I'll tell you about the nature of this entirety of this show, right? Like, the dad talk is talk to dads and bring them on, because I don't think that I don't think that society has the proper healthy relationship for dads that they should.
True.
And so therefore, I think we've become a bit of an over feminized society. And I think the answer to that is not to necessarily mock feminists per se, because there's some ideas in feminism that I'm like, oh yeah, that's a pretty good idea. I like that, right? So to me, the idea better is to say, you know what? Let's celebrate dads. Let's bring them on. Let's talk to them. And so I'll bring on dads, and I'll talk about whatever they want to talk about. In most cases, tonight was a little different because I'm bringing you on to talk about, raising me. So I thought that would be a very interesting topic. So we kind of shifted a little bit in the nature of that. Then I've got a show where I bring on candidates and I talk to only libertarian candidates, right? And then another show which is not really, and they're all under the umbrella of Liberty Dad. And then I have another show which I'm kind of still working on getting it kind of really launched, but that's just going to be where I talk about whatever. It's going to be very monologue. There's no guest, and I just talk about whatever I see. Maybe I talk about politics. Maybe I talk about some video that I saw. Maybe I talk about a movie. Who knows?
So basically, I just helped you advertise.
Yes. I'm advertising on my show. So kind of like, I don't know if that really works so well to advertise on your own show, because the people that are watching your show don't really need the advertisement, I guess. But the idea of Liberty Dad, to encompass all of that, was to take the idea of liberty and the idea of dad and to say, like, look, I want to have a healthy relationship with my son so that in the future, when he grows up and he comes out new ideas that are contrary to what I taught him, that he would at least be willing to have a conversation with me, right? So I need to treat him in a way today, and not just being nice to him, but I need to encourage him to seek out things, and I need to encourage him to explore, even if it's things that I don't particularly like, right? I need to encourage him to explore some. And then one day, hopefully, I will have built up this relationship with him where he's going to go out and he's going to come back and he's going to be like, Dad, I heard this cool thing about communism. And then I'm going to have to bite my tongue again. And, hopefully, he will be, he won't think of me as that crazy libertarian dad who never wanted to hear his opinion. He will be like, oh, let me just hear what Dad has to say, even if he ends up not agreeing. And that will be okay-ish.
Okay. I didn't come on with any particular things in mind. And I don't know how you're going to feel about this, but I will tell you this.
Oh.
Okay. I think I've listened to some of your Liberty Dad shows.
Okay.
Okay. I've lost
hopefully the better ones.
I've lost track lately, but I'm going to say that I think I was a pretty decent dad, but you know what? Not to embarrass you on your own show, but I'm more proud of the dad you are than the dad I was.
Oh my God, it's getting dusty in here.
No, I watch you and Zach together, and I kind of wish you and I had a different path to in our what we like and what we don't like. We never really had what I'd call where we weren't getting along, but I see how close you are with Zach, and I kind of wish I'd been that close with all my kids.
Right.
I didn't ignore them, but I did not give them the time that you give your son.
So in fairness, I do work from home, so he takes my time.
Make a joke out of it.
No, I'm not making a joke. I think it is easier when you work from home in a sense, because I'm literally available all day.
Cool.
Right? And so there's no joke here. Like, if I had to go into the office all the time, which I used to,
right.
I think I wouldn't have all the pictures and all the things with him, because some of those pictures and some of those videos come throughout the day. Right. They're not all just after work hours, if you will, or all on the weekend. Some of them are. So I think he enjoys a certain benefit that just simply was not available to me. But here, since we're putting our cards on the table, okay, since he wanted to make this serious, we're going to do this. Okay. No, you didn't teach me about tools.
No.
And you try to do the sports thing, and I still can't distinguish a hat trick from a touchdown.
Cool.
I mean, I kind of can, but I mean, not
Yeah, I
very
know.
well. So some of like I don't have memories necessarily of growing up and going out and doing some of the things that I do with Zach.
Mhm.
But I feel like I got one of the most important lessons whatsoever that a boy could get from his dad, especially in today's age. And that was how to be a man. Like, I don't feel like, okay, sure. Would it be great to look back? My memory's not that great anyway, but would it be great to look back and be like, oh, yeah, I remember playing catch with my dad? Sure. But here's where I am. There is one story that I hope I never, ever forget, ever. I don't think I will. So let me kind of back up and tell a different story
Okay.
that's unrelated to us. And then I'll kind of segue back and bring us into it.
Okay.
So I have said before that you've heard about this thing like toxic masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that exists. I think what happens, you have bad behaviors of people. Now, what people think of as toxic masculinity, what I believe that what that really ends up being is masculinity that has kind of went wayward.
Okay.
And wayward in the sense where the older generation did not confirm to the younger generation how to be a man. So here's the story. There's a tribe, and I want to say it's like in the Amazon. And when a young boy is determined to be ready to be a man, I don't know who in the village necessarily does it, but they create these little gloves,
Mm-hmm.
and they go and catch bullet ants,
Okay.
and they knock them out. It's a true story, not lying. And then they put the bullet ants all up in the gloves, okay, while they're knocked out. And then the bullet ants eventually wake up, but they're stuck in the gloves.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now a bullet ant is named a bullet ant because the sting of its bite feels similar to being shot by a bullet. Okay, that's why it's named bullet ant, obviously. So these young men, when it's time to be a man, they have to put their hands in the gloves for like 10 minutes or something. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly how long, but they have to put their hands in there. And there's video. You can look it up on YouTube and find the video of these boys, these young men. And that's their ritual. You do this, you become a man.
Okay.
Right? Now, I don't think that we need to do that. And I'm very glad that you didn't do that, because that would be like, I might be a really tough man at that point. But okay. So what I believe is what we're seeing out of this generation of young men, or men, men coming up, is that there was never this moment that said, it is time for you to be a man. Now you do this. Now you're a man. We're going to treat you like that. Right? So let's bring this into a little bit simpler times, because we're in America here and we don't do crazy nonsense like that. Okay? So when I was 18, I would consistently be like, hey, mom, hey, dad, what about this? What about that? What about this? And you may not even remember this, but I remember this. And one day I was asking you guys something, and you literally said, son, it's time to be a man. You need to make a decision, and you need to learn to live with it. Something like that. I mean, I don't know if it was exactly verbatim, but it was pretty close.
That's what you remember. That
right. It was pretty close. It was pretty close, if it's not exactly word for word. Okay. And it was kind of stunning. I was like, what? I got to make a decision? Like, I got to decide this, and I got to live with it? And I feel like that. Now, I didn't exactly turn into a man like right away. Right. I didn't like flip over and all of a sudden now I'm mature and all that. I'm still immature. But now it was very, very clear that you saw me as, you're a man. There was no like ritual that I was expecting, but it was a very clear delineation. There was like a line. Son, you're now a man. You need to behave like one. I'm going to expect you to act like one. I'm going to treat you like a man. Right. And I feel like if there was anything that I absolutely needed in my life, that was it. That one thing. And it's actually it's now Zach's not ready for that yet. Obviously, he's 4. Although I do joke with him. I'm like, hey, you need to act like a man. Like, I just joke with him when it's something silly, nothing serious. But you might remember that I mentored a young man 4 or 5 years ago
where you're going with that.
for I think I started when he was like about maybe 15 and a half, and I mentored him all the way through 18. And it was through an organization here in Jacksonville called Daniel Kids. And I was tough on him all through the time. In fact, I was so tough, folks, that on Easter Sunday, I told you this started. On Easter Sunday, I came to his house. He was supposed to have accomplished something that he promised he was going to do. He didn't do it. He kept giving me excuses. I was unhappy with the excuses, and I refused to accept them. And I kept giving him a hard time. I was like, no, you said you were going to do this. Why didn't you do this? Well, it was too easy. Well, you should have done it then. Like, there's no reason not to do it if it was so easy. Like, why didn't you do it? And I just was giving him a hard time. And finally, this guy, Easter Sunday, I come over to do my weekly mentoring. And he said, you know what? You need to leave, because I'm going to spend time with my family today. And I was like, I was driving home, and I was like, did I go too far with that one? I wasn't sure. But we ended up sticking it out. However, once he became 18, all of a sudden I treated him differently, entirely differently. Now there was no moment where I was like, kid that I've been mentoring, you're a man now. It wasn't like that. But I was definitely, I stopped questioning him. When he told me about decisions that he made that I didn't particularly care for, I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. What are you going to do now? Right. So I very distinctly treated him differently. Okay. And I believe that this stems from I turn 18, and now it's like, hey, you're a man. This is how you be a man. But more than that, like, I grew up, and I feel like observing you, because I like to tell my wife, I'm like, I observe people, and I feel like what I observed was somebody that was a man, was what a man should be, a good example. Now, did you have mistakes? Everybody has mistakes, of course they did, but on net balance, by far, I feel like what I observed was, this is how you be a man, this is how you treat a woman, this is how you act in this particular case.
I can remember something.
Right. Like, I'll give you an example. I'll give you a funny example. Let's stop being so serious. This is a podcast. Goodness gracious. Okay. So let's, probably about a year ago, my mother-in-law comes in, and I'm working. I'm on my laptop, and she doesn't bother me when I'm on my laptop. So she was like, hey, DL, can you come here? And I was like, oh, she doesn't really do this. Must be important. So I'm, yeah, sure. So I go in, I see, she's like, there's a snake in the room.
Jeez.
And let's see. I think my first thought was, oh, shit. That was my first thought, really. Because I was like, man, I don't play with wildlife. Okay. But I'm like, I'm the man of the house. Like, I may not play with wildlife, but I got to go deal with this. So close the door so they didn't see how I dealt with it. But I captured the snake and it was like an 8-inch snake. Very big. And my son would play with it. He didn't realize, he didn't know any better. He was just like, he tried to grab it and the snake took off, and that's how she knew. So I grabbed the snake. So what's funny about that is, I remember in the house that we lived in Richmond, a bat got in the house. Mm-hmm. And tell me if I got this wrong, because I swear I remember this, but you somehow ended up stabbing it and stuffing it in the garbage disposal. Am I correct on that? No. Okay. I got that totally wrong, but that's what I remember. I remember my dad being a badass, talking about, like, I'm gonna stab a snake. Like, he didn't quite bite it off.
I did snakes. I actually had caught a snake with hedge clippers.
Oh, okay.
And beat it against a tree.
Okay. Fair enough.
I did do it.
Okay.
As far as the bats go, I caught them in a net.
Oh, okay.
And we usually would let them outside.
Oh, okay. Well, I remember. So whatever. So that's how I remembered it. And so I was like, that's what being a man is. Like, if you need to stab a bat and then stuff it in the garbage disposal, I don't know where I got that in my mind. Like, whatever. But, the idea behind it being, like, as the man of the house, there are certain things that you do, even if you don't want to do them. And trust me, I don't want to, like, when I hear snake in the house, I don't want to run and go grab the snake. I don't care if it's an 8-inch snake or an 8-foot snake. However, if it's an 8-foot snake, we're probably going to all evacuate, and I'm calling somebody. Okay. Because, I got to make sure the family's safe. And so I got to get them out. You know what I'm saying? Like, so But to me, to kind of keep this, lighthearted a little bit, I do believe that, what I learned was how to be a man. What I hope to teach my own son is how you be a man. And I don't mean like you man up, you never ever cry, you never do this. I don't mean these false ideas necessarily of a man, but like a man who, like I don't remember I remember you always having a job and always going to work,
Right.
right? So like this is what you do, right? Yeah, you might be sick, you may not be feeling so good, your foot hurts, whatever the case may be, you go to work, right? um and so like all these experiences that may have seemed minor or trivial, or maybe you don't even remember, right? I think they impacted me in like, hey, this is how you be a man. Even stories of like, hey, your mom's going out, go with her and protect her. You've said that,
Yes, I did.
right? You said that, like, and granted, it wasn't you going out per se, but it was the idea that as a male, you protect the women in your life, right? And so I feel like this is the absolute best lesson that I could have possibly received, and I happen to have received it.
You know what I think is the best lesson you ever received? And I will tell you, I did not plan this. It just came to mind now. The best lesson wasn't how you handle your child. It's the fact that you were there for your child. And we're in a world now, there's a lot of fathers that are not there for their child.
Right.
And I think that is the best lesson. That you're going to mess this up, you're going to mess that up, but you're there.
Right. Absolutely. And if somebody were to be like, DL, sit down and tell me all the things that you think that your parents messed up on, I could do that, but like, why? I don't. That would be dumb. But if you said, DL, were your parents there? Yeah, always. Mom and dad were there. I remember. You probably won't remember this. I remember, and we're gonna wind this down because we're over an hour,
Okay.
and but I remember coming home, and I think I was very afraid of a bully or something like that. And then I don't remember exactly how the conversation went, but I remember you coming in and having a conversation about it, right? Like you were there to help me figure out how to deal with this bully or whatever was going on, and I don't remember exactly. It's a very vague memory, but I remember you coming in and we having a conversation, and I was really concerned about this issue that was going on. And so you were there. And so, these are the lessons, and they're not ones that necessarily get told around the campfire per se. I mean, they might come up, but usually you tell the funny ones, the scary ones, the ones that really, really stand out. But those aren't necessarily the ones that really shape you into who you are. It's all the ones that you might forget until you're intentionally and deliberately talking about them. Those are the ones that really shape you.
Right.
I think, at least for the better. I mean, if they're, if you had a rough childhood, that's a different story, and maybe things work out a little differently. But when you had a great childhood or an overall really good childhood, right? I think that a lot of the stories, they kind of go under the radar when it's time to tell them. So, all right. Any final words for the audience here that's listening?
Final
Say it in
word.
Chinese because they're probably.
I don't know Chinese. I know your wife probably does, but I don't.
I was trying to think of like one Chinese word. I don't even know a single Chinese
Me
word.
neither.
So, but we can say konnichiwa to the people in Japan. It might be morning there. I don't know. Maybe I got that right. Probably nobody in Asia is watching.
I'm going to let you handle that.
All right, folks, it has been great. I enjoyed having my dad on. I hope you enjoyed it as well. Stick around. I know I've been a little bit off kilter recently. That's because as the chair of the party here in Jacksonville, here in Duval, the chair of the Libertarian Party, I've been rather busy. So that's a good thing. But unfortunately, I had to make some decisions, being a man, right? And I had to say, all right, my podcast or working as a chair when you got 3 candidates running. And obviously, 3 candidates running got my priority. So the election is over now. we are still working as a Libertarian Party. And so now things are going to dial down just a wee bit, not a whole lot, but probably enough to get me going and up and running. So expect more episodes. I want to thank everybody for tuning in and have a good night. As I like to say, stay safe and guard your